Okay, so we're now live, everybody. Just going to allow a few moments for people to join, and then we will start the webinar. Okay, thanks very much for joining. We're just waiting for a couple of minutes to let people to join. I think there's a couple more people just joining, so I'm getting up to a good number. Okay, good. Right, thank you very much. Right, good evening, everybody. Let's get this meeting started. So, good evening, I'm David Charlesworth. I'm the chair tonight. I'm on the GCP comms team. I'll be looking after tonight's meeting. This is the GCP Northern Community Forum meeting. We've got two presentations and Q&A sessions for you tonight. I'm joined by Paul van der Balk, who is project manager for the Water Beach to Cambridge project and Histon Road and Milton Road. He'll be doing presentations on that section. And before that, I'm joined by my colleague Isabel Wade, who'll be doing the presentation on the City Access Making Connections consultation that's both currently live. I'm going to run the meeting in two halves. So the first half will be a presentation by Isabel, and then we'll do a Q&A session about that presentation, and then we'll move on to the individual projects that Paul is looking after in the north of the city, and we'll do a Q&A on those. So just to run through a little bit of housekeeping before we start, and just to say also that tonight's meeting is just going to be sort of a Q&A session, but these community forums will in the future probably take different formats. There might be some breakout rooms and some workshops, but tonight, just because we're in the middle of a consultation, we're doing a set of presentations and question and answers afterwards. As you can see, because of the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic issues, this is an online meeting rather than an in-face meeting. We're using the Zoom webinar format. The normal rules of behaviour apply, so everyone's reminded that inappropriate conduct or disruptive behaviour may result in you being excluded from the event. We do have technical assistance on hand. I appreciate everyone's joining from home, but if we have any unavoidable technical issues, I'm sure we'll be able to work through them. There are two ways when we come to the Q&A session that you can ask questions. You can either put your hand up and we can then unmute you and ask you the question, or if you want to put something in the chat function, we'll monitor that and I will read out the questions. If there are a number of similar questions, I will sort of brigade them together onto topics for either of the presenters. And of course, if you don't wish to ask anything in a public thing and something occurs to you at the end of it, please email us afterwards and we'll get back to you. We are recording this. That's simply so that this will then be more available via our YouTube channel, just as a record of the part of the consultation we did. And I think that is kind of all the housekeeping, and that's enough from me. So I'm going to hand you over to Isabel Wade, who is going to do the first presentation on making connections. Thank you, Isabel.
Cool, thank you very much, David. So I'm just going to bring my screen up, and then perhaps you can just confirm that you can see that for me.
Yep, I can see it. Yes, I can see that. Yeah, and I can see that.
Fantastic, thank you. Hi everybody. I'm going to talk to you about our Making Connections consultation that is underway at the moment. So the consultation is broadly about three things. Firstly, our proposals to transform the Greater Cambridge and kind of wider travel to work areas bus network, how we alongside that can create space, not just to run kind of better bus services, but also for improvements to cycling and walking, as well as enhancing our public spaces. And then thirdly, the principles for funding these improvements and creating that road space through a potential charge on vehicles driving or parking charges. So as many of you are aware, our area faces a huge number of pressures over the coming years. You know, we have a lot of jobs growth in this area, but that means that we have kind of many more people who, you know, want to come and live and work here. And we know that if everybody kind of travelled as they were doing kind of over the last few years, then congestion would worsen on kind of the situation that we have already, and we'd be kind of facing a gridlock situation in many instances. We also know that our area has quite high carbon emissions from transport, and the city also experiences problems with air pollution as well. So what we want to do with these proposals is kind of address quite a lot of these issues. So we want to make it kind of much easier for people, much quicker, much better for people to take the bus, and reduce kind of journey times, also reduce journey times more generally. Want to help more people to access the opportunities that this area has, whether that be kind of work, leisure, health services, education, etc. And we want to reduce carbon emissions and improve air quality as well. We also want to make sure that we kind of make the best use of the space that we have on our transport network, so that we can provide better environments for people walking and cycling, and kind of that links more widely with having kind of better public spaces for us to enjoy, as well as improving the health of our communities as well. So this is just a kind of slide on some of what I'll talk through, starting with kind of you know, the bus network, how we can lower traffic levels and look at raising funding, as well as improving our public spaces. So just to kind of talk about the bus proposals in detail, first of all. So what we're talking about here is really a transformation in terms of the level of service that we would have in the area. So we're talking about kind of longer operating hours between 5 AM and midnight every day, more frequent services. So within the city, that would mean a service at least every 10 minutes, in many cases, kind of every 5 minutes or less. And from our larger villages and towns, a service every 10 minutes. And in rural areas, you know, some of which I know are particularly kind of poorly served by public transport at the moment, kind of moving to an hourly service as well. What we're kind of looking at with the network is, you know, how can we speed up journey times? So part of that is about lower traffic levels, but also about kind of having more direct services to some of the wider places that people want to go. So at the moment we have a network that's relatively centred on the city centre, but actually how can we offer more direct connections to places like the hospitals, biomedical campus, the science park? How can we introduce some express services that might cut journey times as well for people coming in? And then kind of finally, we're looking at fares and, you know, how can we make bus travel more affordable for people, particularly in the context of, you know, how do we make this a natural choice for more people compared to the car? So in terms of that bus network, I appreciate this is quite a small diagram with quite a lot happening on it. So I am going to talk through some of the bus proposals for the northern part of Greater Cambridge in more detail shortly. But this map demonstrates some of that kind of join up that we're looking for in the bus network in terms of kind of providing good rural coverage, enhancing the core network, so as well as having good services kind of into the city centre. We also have good services, orbital services around the city, cross city services, etc. And again, making sure that these are kind of, this is a network that operates, you know, across the whole day from 5 AM till midnight. So within the city, we haven't kind of drawn a detailed map for the city at this point. We're kind of not at that point in the project yet of doing that detailed design, but what we are proposing is, again, the longer operating hours with very frequent buses, both to the city centre but also to kind of key destinations, including the stations, the biomedical campus, science park, West Cambridge. We're Also looking at regular services that link up residential areas with shops and services, supermarkets, and orbital services that enable kind of people to travel around the city as well. We want residents to be able to access this network really easily. So having people kind of within 5 minutes walk of a bus stop, and ideally within 7 of one that offers fast services as well. And then finally, we're looking at fares. So, you know, should we have more of a kind of London style system where they have a kind of £1.50 flat fare for the city? You know, how can we make the bus more affordable and more of a obvious choice for people? So across the network more widely, there are a number of benefits that would apply. I think most of these I've covered, but just to pick up in terms of small villages, I think, you know, we want to make sure that kind of rural services is as good as possible. There might be some instances where small villages don't quite have the population that could support a regular bus service, but making sure that people still have opportunities to plug into the network, either through a connecting service, through demand responsive services, one of which is being trialled in West Huntingdonshire at the moment, and also through accessing travel hubs. So I'm just going to talk through the proposals for the kind of north of Greater Cambridge in a little bit more detail. So first of all, the Waterbeach, Cottenham and Ely corridor. So we're looking at kind of services every 10 minutes coming in from Ely, Waterbeach, Cottenham, Histon, etc., and making sure that those services kind of link up not just with the city centre, but also with the West Cambridge site, with the hospitals, with the biomedical campus, so that there's kind of a wider range of services available. And we want to build on some of the successes in the area, like the Ely Zipper service that's quite popular, to create that better rural connectivity as well, so that people kind of have an hourly service that runs throughout the day and will link them up better with the core network. So then the North Stowe and St Ives corridor, again, frequent services using this corridor on the existing busway, kind of every 5 minutes or less, using that corridor. And again, making sure that we have services that don't just kind of serve those larger villages, but also plug villages more widely into the network. So having kind of an hourly loop service that plugs into the busway, as well as Bar Hill, and then kind of services to the north of St Ives as well. And again, linking people up with the Science Park and the city centre, and also the biomedical campus in Addenbrooke's. So a network of this kind of scale is, we think, if we introduce that alongside looking at introducing cheaper fares, that would cost in the region of around £40 million a year. And what we kind of know from the experience of other places is that, you know, obviously as you introduce improvements, more people use the bus, there could be more income from ticketing, but we know that in basically everywhere there's always a level of public subsidy required if you want to make the bus attractive, by providing that network coverage and by looking at fares as well. So we know that we need two things to make public transport, walking and cycling, kind of an attractive, fast, reliable choice for people. So the first is raising that money so we can invest in bus services, as well as improving our walking and cycling network. And the second is cutting congestion and freeing up road space so that we can make the improvements we need. And we're looking at three options for how we might create space and create funding for these improvements. So on one side of your screen, you've got a pollution charge and a flexible charge. And these are essentially variations of the same thing. It would be a charging zone covering an area. And if you were driving within that area, there would be a daily charge. If it was a pollution charge, that charge might be based on the emissions of the vehicle that was being driven in the zone. If it was a flexible charge, it may be based more on the time of day or the day of the week. And it's also possible to kind of combine these options as well. The second option is parking charges. So that's looking at applying higher charges to more of the city's parking, but also introducing something called a workplace parking levy, which is essentially a yearly fee charged to organisations for all the parking spaces that they provide to employees at workplaces. And those organisations have a choice about what they do with that fee. They can choose to pay it, they could choose to pass it on to their employees, or they could choose to reduce their the parking that they have at their premises in order to reduce the amount that they have to pay. So this is very much kind of a consultation where we're looking for feedback on these three options, which, you know, subject to kind of what we hear in this consultation. If we did take any of this forward for detailed design, there is kind of some particular questions in the consultation that we're looking for feedback on. So these are around the hours that charges could operate, the areas that could be covered, as well as the cost of a charge. And in particular, we're asking about the impact of this, because very much, you know, the idea of this is to create the conditions for a much better public transport, walking and cycling network. But we do know that kind of charging would have impacts on people. And so we're keen to understand as part of the consultation what that might mean for people. So I just wanted to kind of finish with a little bit of context. So this project, the Making Connections project, which if you follow our board meetings closely, you might have seen referred to as City Access. It's very much part of a wider Greater Cambridge Partnership programme to improve sustainable transport across our area. And Paul is obviously going to talk about some of those projects after me, but it does include the 4 segregated high quality routes for electric buses and active travel coming in from the north, west, south, east and east, as well as the upgrades to places like Histon and Milton Road, and the new active travel routes, including the Greenways and the Chisholm Trail as well. And City Access, Making Connections, very much sits at the heart of all this, because we know we need that better infrastructure so that people have an option to travel in a different way, but we also need the services and the kind of wider environment for active travel that sits around that, particularly in terms of kind of our rural areas, plugging people into that network, but also in terms of the city where we have more constrained space, making sure that we use that space as best we can. And then just finally, I wanted to say that we've very much grounded what is in this consultation in what we've been told previously when we've had previous consultations. So firstly, the Choices for Better Journeys consultation that took place in 2019, where we asked people about their vision for public transport, as well as some of these options for raising revenue and creating space. We also held a citizens' assembly in 2019, which brought together a group of people who were kind of randomly invited to be part of the citizens' assembly, and then kind of selected based on demographic criteria so that they were broadly representative of Greater Cambridge and the wider travel to work area. And we asked them about how we could improve public transport, reduce congestion and tackle air pollution. And they came up with a vision that very much put affordable, fast, reliable public transport at the heart, put kind of being environmental, meeting zero carbon objectives up there, as well as making sure there was more space for people walking, for people cycling, and we had a kind of better environment. So very much these proposals are designed with this feedback that we've had previously in mind. So just a quick reminder of the 3 things that we're asking people about: the bus network, creating space for walking, cycling, and the principles around funding and delivering these improvements as well. So there's various ways that you can tell us what you think. We have a survey online, which is there, and you can also ring us or request a hard copy. If you do have any questions, or you would prefer to submit a written response, for example, if you're an organisation, then our email address is just on the screen there, as well as being on our website. The consultation runs until midday on Monday, so please do ask your friends, family, colleagues to fill it out. What we will do kind of following the closure of the consultation is collate that feedback, and a report will be produced of that feedback for our executive board in June next year, where they will consider kind of what we've been told, as well as kind of next steps. if there was a decision to move ahead with improvements to the bus network and the active travel network and a charge, there would be a second consultation on a more detailed scheme. So thank you very much, everybody. I'm very happy to take questions as well.
Okay, thank you very much, Isabel. So I have got, I don't see any hands up in my thing. So let's start to go through the comments in the chat. That's fine. If people are making statements, we'll just note the statements and we will take those as part of it. But I'm going to focus on questions, so if we get through as many questions as possible. So the first question is Isabel, is do you think there are enough people wanting to fill all these extra seats on the buses? So, you know, how are we managing to, is the demand going to meet the supply, I think, really?
Yeah, thank you. So I think this question might partly relate to kind of the last couple of years and kind of COVID, more working from home. You know, how has our travel changed? What we know is that kind of outside the city, travel is already at or above kind of what it was previously. Within the city, we're not quite back to where we were, but we're nearly there. And I think anyone who's kind of travelled recently in the city will probably have encountered quite significant congestion at particular points of the day or kind of particular parts of the city as well. So what we've kind of seen is that more people as well are getting back in their cars rather than back on buses, which is understandable. But we know, given kind of the jobs growth in our area, we are going to have many more people kind of coming to work. A lot of the jobs that we have in this area are not ones that could be done from home. We have people who, you know, want to travel not just for work, but for school, for leisure, etc. So, you know, our kind of work shows that we will continue to see a significant number of people wanting to kind of move around, and we need a sustainable option for people to do that.
Okay, thanks, Isabel. So a sort of slightly follow-on question from that is that a lot of the roads run to the core city centre, and the bus plan appears to require nearly all the buses go to city centre. Is there going to be enough space for them in the city centre under this plan?
Cool, thank you. So I think the idea of the bus network that we're proposing is actually, you know, the city centre has reasonable service already, you know, enhancing that, but actually a lot of these additional services would go to places like the hospital, the biomedical campus, the science park, places where, you know, we have significant employment growth, and we need to kind of link that up, as well as, you know, better serving some of our residential areas, so that, you know, we focus quite a lot on journeys to work. That's really important, but also, you know, journeys where people are perhaps, you know, caring for family, visiting friends, you know, accessing services as well. And that's kind of quite a diverse picture. So very aware that, you know, the city centre is a constrained environment. I think following this consultation, you know, we will collate the feedback, and if we kind of have a kind of move forward on this, we will look at the city centre and bus access to that in more detail, and that will be part of what we bring forward in June.
Thanks, Isabel. And then a final question on this is, I hear someone saying, I hear that the bus companies are already short of drivers. How would you manage getting the extra drivers for the services? I think that's some of the bus companies, but is there anything you want to add to that?
Cool, thank you. So I think you know, making sure that we can get this operational and delivered is going to be really key. I think what we would want to do is kind of work with the bus companies to build up services, you know, over a period of time and with some notice. So if we need to be recruiting more drivers, you know, we know what that looks like in terms of a lead-in, and we can kind of get going on that.
Okay. So then just moving on, there's a couple of questions about the car parking. So firstly, the question here is, will all the car parks provided by top private entities be provided to pay the parking levy? For example, the big shops down Newmarket Road, would they have to pay a parking levy, or you know, how would it work in terms of sort of those sort of big shared use parking spaces?
Cool, thank you. So a workplace parking levy applies to the spaces that are provided to employees at a workplace. So some of the parking that kind of is more for kind of people shopping, etc. That levy wouldn't apply to that. We would obviously, I think if we were looking at parking charges, we'd want to look at them across the board. It would be kind of a levy, looking at kind of other parking as well, including kind of on street and off street car parking. So while it doesn't apply specifically to a levy, we would want to kind of look at that in more detail too.
Thanks, Isabel. And an ancillary question is then how would you manage the station car park at Cambridge North and Cambridge, really? The person's comments that Network Rail is proposing to increase the number of parking spaces and therefore encouraging people to drive to Cambridge North. Would that be covered in a similar way?
So that wouldn't be covered by a levy specifically, but again, I think my general point around kind of working with car park owners, whether they be kind of private or public sector owners, to make sure that the city's parking makes sense, and we kind of have a coordinated approach. It would be kind of the aim. The Greater Cambridge Partnership has agreed to produce an integrated parking strategy, which will start to look at some of these issues and how we can better manage parking, so that we kind of have a more coordinated system that encourages sustainable travel.
Okay, thanks, Isabel. So another question here about blue badge holders. Clearly people who have blue badges, by the definition, limit their ability to walk distances and may struggle to use buses. Will you be retaining adequate parking for them and not charging them for access, is the question.
Cool, thank you. So I think the kind of question of blue badge holders would be something that we'd look at in detail as part of designing any scheme. I think the kind of feedback that we've had previously is that if people would quite like us to think not just about how can I access using my car, but actually can we improve the bus offer for people for disabled people for people with mobility impairments. How can we improve the bus offer? How can we improve things more generally? But completely understand that for many people, the car is a lifeline. So that would be looked at as part of the detailed design. In other places where they have charge, such as London and Birmingham, they've exempted disabled tax class vehicles. That would be one option. So that would be part of a detailed design of the scheme. Yeah.
Thanks, Isabel. So I've got a specific question about Willingham next, which is a large village, which is actually worse off on the proposal as we lose our direct bus to Cambridge. How set in stone are the plans that you've shown tonight? I mean, are they indicative, or is there, is there more chance to change them?
Yes, so they are indicative. This is a consultation. It's very much about getting feedback on the proposals. I think for Willingham at the moment, it's about a 2-hourly service. It doesn't run in the evenings and it doesn't run at the weekends. I think what we've got on the table here is something that would be hourly, would run over the evenings and the weekends. So I think we're keen to have feedback on whether a proposal like that is good, or is there alternatives. So not set in stone. Please do tell us what you think.
Thanks, Isabel. So there's a question here. The South Cambs MPs run a questionnaire where people wanted faster connections and lower fares but didn't want to pay for it. So are we taking that into consideration in our work?
So I think our consultation has kind of presented a package of this. So it is kind of linked up, the improvements that we want to make to transport with the charge. We wouldn't introduce a charge without kind of a plan on the table for those improvements. So I think the kind of South Cambridgeshire MP has submitted his questionnaire results to us as kind of part of his response, but I think there'll kind of be a wider response on that in the coming days from the GCP board chair as well.
Okay, thanks as well. So a question here, which is, I'm concerned about the zone charge and how they would affect city residents who would be driving in a charge zone as soon as they left their home. So how would it impact people in this charge zone?
So thank you. So again, this is something that we need to look at as part of the detailed design of any scheme. What we kind of have said so far in terms of kind of the technical work that we've done is that around 50% of the cars that are driving in Cambridge are people within Cambridge making journeys within Cambridge, and around 50% are people coming in from outside. So on that basis, where we're starting is that you would have a zone where kind of everybody would pay, whether they were kind of moving within the zone or kind of coming in from outside. But you know, this is a consultation. There is a question about the impact of charging on people, and I'd encourage people to give their views on that. The other thing I would say is that you know, we know that the city transport network needs improvements, just as the kind of wider areas transport network needs improvements. And so kind of residents making a contribution to that improvement, you know, may be seen as kind of as fair, rather than kind of the money coming from outside to pay for something within. So I think there's points that people might want to pick up on that in terms of consultation and response, but hopefully that gives a bit of a sense of the options. Okay.
There are, again, a few people are making sort of statements in here, which we will take away, but I'm just trying to pick out some of the key questions. There's a question here, which is the travel hubs. Will the travel hubs differ from the current park and ride mode, which, you know, may just shift the problem out of the city centre and take up large areas of car parking? So what's different about a travel hub really as well?
Yeah, thank you. So I think, you know, travel hubs are kind of a bit of a different beast. They are multimodal. They're about kind of not just drive your car, park, get on a bus, but, you know, take a bus and change buses, cycle to or from, as well as kind of offering that access by car. Because I think, as I said at the start, we know we can't give absolutely everybody a bus exactly when they want it, where they want it. We're going to still need to have, you know, some provision for people to be able to plug into this network. We did publish some travel hub design principles at the start of this year, which I'm sure we could provide to the person asking the question if they wish to follow that up with us.
Thanks, Isabel. So moving on, just will more space be allocated to cyclists and cycle parking in the city centre as part of these proposals?
Cool, thank you. So I think very much, you know, the idea here is to create more space for people walking, for people cycling in the city. We haven't got the kind of detailed design of that at this point, but that's kind of very much the idea. I think we would like to see much more cycle parking in the city centre. Certainly, you know, if we're expecting people to make more journeys that way, then you know, increasing the current provision will be a priority.
Thanks very much. So a question here about how this consultation and the local plan work together. So essentially, sort of a couple of questions really about how does this interact with the local plan, which the consultation has just closed as well.
Yeah, thank you. So so the local plan sets the kind of growth context for our work. So in terms of kind of understanding the level of kind of jobs, employment, economic growth we're likely to see in the area, and kind of what that means in terms of kind of population and housing. And our proposals kind of follow on from that in terms of, you know, how do you manage kind of the increasing numbers of people who will be living in our area? How do you kind of offer them a better way to travel, you know, that helps meet kind of some of our environmental objectives, as well as, you know, improving access to employment and to education and opportunity in the area.
So a couple of questions about they're quite detailed questions about the buses, but I think I'll just pick them up, which is, first of all, it's something I've seen on the continent, which is, will the buses be able to take cycles so that people can put their bike on the back and then cycle, get the bus in and then cycle, which I've definitely seen in mainland Europe, but that's quite a detailed question. Do we have an answer at this stage about things like that?
Yeah, so I think it's an idea that's been raised with us. We're keen to look at it in more detail. Unfortunately, in this country, it's illegal to put a cycle on the front of a bus, although probably also fortunately because it is for safety reasons. But we are looking at kind of, ways that we can better link up those two modes.
Thank you. I've got a few questions here, a couple of questions about the bus ticketing, which again is quite detailed for early on in the consultation, which is, would we include transfer bus tickets? Would the ticket be made as seamless as possible? Are we looking at contactless? So sort of tell us about the ticketing we're looking at and thinking about as well, really.
Yep, so we'd like to see a much more integrated ticketing regime. So, you can pay via contactless. You could take, more than one bus on your way kind of to get somewhere. I think, as David said, it's relatively early stage proposals, but we are looking at kind of, how can we make it cheaper for, for groups of people, families traveling together? How can we make it cheaper for kind of people trying to access employment, younger people, as well as looking at options for making tickets more affordable across the board, such as kind of flat fares or fare reductions too. I think there's been quite a few detailed comments on this in terms of kind of the current fare zones and what that means for people, which, we'll take into account in terms of the consultation feedback.
So just moving on, you've given some indicative examples, but someone's asking if we have draft timetables. I don't think we have that level of detail yet, other than what you've already said. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right.
That's fine. Okay. And question here, which is, are we, this is quite a technical question, but I think it's worth exploring, which is, have we looked at different charging models? I like a single charging zone like London, or multi zones like the gentleman indicates in Milan, or a point charging based on the actual congestion and speed like Singapore? So I know there's different charges for modelling. I know it's quite a technical question, but I think it's worth us just talking a bit about the work you've done. So.
Yes, yeah. So the work we've done has looked at kind of both kind of UK based as well as international examples of charging. We have to work within the legislation that exists in this country in terms of kind of how we specify charge. But again, that would be kind of more of the detailed design in terms of how we take this forward, whether we kind of would work on the basis of that. I think it's important though that any scheme makes sense to people. We don't make it too complicated, so we will be balancing that with the design and nuance of the scheme.
Okay, thank you very much. There are lots of comments, people making statements, which again we will cover. There is one here which is, bus services should lead to lower traffic levels. This is not the best way, rather than building barriers. So I think again it's like kind of which is coming first. Is the bus improvements or the congestion coming first? So I know it's a bit of a symbiotic relationship, but how do you see it working together?
Yeah, certainly. So I think what we know is that in order to make bus improvements, we're going to need an ongoing funding source. So the Greater Cambridge Partnership does have some money that we can put into bus services, but our money is time limited. We only have a certain amount. Once it's gone, it's gone. So if we want those services on an ongoing basis, we're going to need an ongoing source of money. The second point to make is around the space. So if we put more bus services on now at the scale that is envisaged here, where would there be space on the road for them? How do we get people to take them if they're not reliable and fast? So what we would like to do is very much, we've said we would want to improve public transport before kind of any sort of charge was brought in, but that's going to have to be done in a kind of careful way, so that we scale up over time and take advantage of the space that would become available as a kind of any charge came in. But we do know kind of from experience in other places that you can't just improve the service, that you need those elements, the funding and the space in order to do that sufficiently that people actually do want to get on the bus.
Okay, thanks Isabel. So I've got two or three more questions. So people want to type or put their hand up. Now is a good time, because I think I'm trying to summarize a few topics, so I'm not covering each individual one, but one here, which is, I think it's about, fundamentally, is, are people living in Cambridge cross-subsidising transport for people living outside Cambridge under this model? So living in Cambridge is costly, and will this essentially mean that we're subsidising bus services outside the city? And will they see improvements in the Cambridge itself? Is the sort of a question around that, if that makes sense as well.
Yeah, certainly. So I think this kind of comes back to something I was saying a bit earlier about, very much this is about improving the Cambridge City network, also improving the Cambridge City environment in terms of, better walking and cycling, lower air pollution, and kind of nicer spaces. But it's also about improving that connectivity in the area more widely. And we know that about 50% of journeys within the city by car are kind of city residents. Another half is kind of people coming in from elsewhere. So it's reasonably balanced, and certainly in terms of any detailed design, we'd be looking to kind of maintain that.
Brilliant. We had a question about a big village, Willingham. So I've got a question about a small village now, which is Landbeach, which is, the person says Landbeach to Cambridge is a very limited service at the moment. And in terms of the scale of how something would help, how would you deliver a sort of improvements for something like Landbeach? Are you looking for your map? You are. Landbeach, yeah. Landbeach is between Waterbeach and
yes.
And
no, I did know where it was. I just wanted to kind of check the map we have here. So I think we'd envisage that somewhere like Landbeach would move to at least an hourly service. Possibly more frequent if some of the kind of services between Ely and Cambridge kind of were stopping services. I think in general for smaller villages, we would want them to have good connections into the network. We are looking with the combined authority at things like demand responsive travel, where you'd be able to kind of book a bus service on your phone, either through an app or kind of through making a call for a particular time. As well, so that's kind of how that would be taken forward in the network.
Thanks. I see there's a couple of questions about the Waterbeach Greenway. We'll deal with those in the second half of the meeting. One's Paul van der Belk, who's the project manager covering the northern projects. We've done a bit of a presentation to update people on that, but we'll come back to those. We're just focusing on the sort of questions around the current sort of city access proposals. There's a specific question here, which is, someone says, ask what will the provision for prams be on the buses? And again, I think in terms of, let's broaden that out into question, is what would the sort of disabled access, people with prams, people with limited mobility, people with heavy shopping, all those things, what sort of vehicles are you envisaging in this upgrade?
So I think, again, that's part of the kind of detailed design. We want to work with operators on what's available. I think what we've kind of heard previously is that, people sometimes find it difficult because there is limited space on buses. So kind of understanding what's possible and kind of bringing that forward, really. Okay.
That's fine. Again, I've got some questions about Milton Road. Milton Road is in the second half of this presentation, and we've got a little bit of an update before we will take questions on that. So that's it. Okay, I've got Naomi, you've put your hand up. So if I press this button, that should unmute you, and you should be able to speak. If you unmute your microphone on your computer, you should be able to speak, Naomi.
Yeah. Hi. Oh, I'm there now.
I can hear you now, Naomi. So ask your question away, please. Oh, you've muted yourself again. Oh, we can't hear you at the moment, Naomi. Okay, I can't hear you at the moment, Naomi, so oh, yep.
Right, I'm okay now?
You are okay now?
You can hear me.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Yes.
sorry about that. Yeah, I am very concerned about where exactly these congestion charges are, zones are going to be. Are they going to be really quite central? Because I come back to my point that if you live in Cambridge, where you're paying very high council taxes and so forth, and you're going to be slapped on with a charge, especially if it's like a daily charge, let's say it's on the London model, you get in your car and it's 15 quid. Most people walk or cycle where they can now anyhow, but there are occasions where you need cars. That's going to be really quite a hit on residents in the city, depending on exactly where this zone is.
Yeah.
If it's really right in the very, very centre, I might understand it, but people who go to, I don't know, the big shed shops to B&Q or something, what are you supposed to do there if you're...
Okay, so I think fundamentally, Isabel, the question there was where is this? How big is this zone going to be? Really?
Yeah, thank you. So, so in the consultation, we're asking people for views on this. We've suggested kind of two broad options. We haven't got to the point at which we're sort of drawing lines on a map. What we've kind of said is that we could cover quite a central area, but we would need the charge to be higher because obviously we'd be affecting fewer journeys. Probably in the region of 10 to 15 pounds per day. If we covered a broader area, and that kind of might be, more of the city, it certainly wouldn't include park and ride sites or anything like that. That would be a lower charge, around kind of in the region of around £5 a day. So we're asking people for feedback on that as part of the consultation.
Okay, thanks very much as well. Naomi, any follow-up question, or does that?
Well, not really. There does seem to be a general feeling that somehow Cambridge has to just suck it up, and if you are an occasional motorist in Cambridge, then you're going to get hit. I mean, I, for example, have a husband with a disability, but not everyone has blue badges. They're hard to get hold of. I think that a lot of people have already done the modal shifts of, cycling with their kids to school and all that sort of stuff, or I walk to work, So I think people are doing where they can, but it's really a very hefty hit if you find you've got to drive into the city and it's going to be 15 quid. And it's also people working, like, the so famous white van men. This has been going on in London with the ULEZ charges. They extended the zone to the sort of total consternation of a whole load of people who have to drive. Okay,
thanks for your comments. Please make your representation by putting feedback through our survey, or if you want to just email us and with your points, then use the email address and we'll take those into consideration as part of the consultation.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. So just looking now, there's quite an interesting discussion here now, Isabel, about bikes on buses, which I think is has caused a few people to comment. We'll capture all those comments. As I think Isabel already said, you can't put a bike on the front of a bus in the UK. In the UK, it's not legal. Although someone's claimed that they did do that in the Isle of Wight. So
I think you can put the bikes in different places. It's just about how easy it is to combine the two in terms of, if you stop and people have to get out and get their bikes off and things. So, there's some practical things that we need to look at in terms of how we can make that work.
Yeah, okay, that's fine. That's really very good. Excellent. So just one question here, which I don't think we've really covered, which is, have you considered a shopping delivery service? So you take all your shopping from different places to a central point, and then it's delivered for you. It could be a big saving in driving, driving in to do shopping. So something about sort of basically sort of goods management within the area of people's shopping and stuff.
Yeah, thank you. So we are looking at kind of how we can consolidate the freight.
Oh,
sorry, that was me just knocking something over. Apologies. Yes, we are looking at kind of freight, particularly in the city centre, both in terms of kind of how we can consolidate what's coming in, but also kind of in the longer term, things going out as well. So I think that's a good suggestion. And again, if we were to move forward with a scheme, kind of that's the sort of thing we would be looking at. Okay, that's good.
I think I've broadly covered everyone who has to sort of topic of question, and I think there are a few more nuances, but we'll pick that up. There was a number of statements. There's an interesting discussion about bikes on buses. but I don't see any new questions. I'm talking while you might want to type. I don't see anyone else has got their hand up. Naomi, you've left your hand up. I'm assuming that's a legacy hand from the last question. So I think that's where we are. So just to give one moment for anyone to ask another question as well, just remind us when the consultation closes.
Yes, thank you. So consultation will close at midday on Monday. So please do encourage kind of friends, family, colleagues to do the survey as well as doing it yourself. And we, as I said before, if you'd rather kind of put in a written representation, either as an individual or as a kind of on behalf of an organisation, then we will be accepting those as well. So you know, do take the opportunity to have your say on this. And as I said before, kind of the feedback that we get now will inform the next steps. If we do move forward with a more detailed scheme, there will be another consultation next year on that.
Okay, Isabel, thank you very much. I think on that moment, we will move on to the next set of presentations. Thank you very much for your comments and things. Again, if you feel that we've not covered something, it's not deliberate. I'm trying to summarize and chair the meeting at the same time. So if you have a particular point or something, please do email us with the things and we're happy to respond, or you can make comment via our Facebook page or on Twitter. Any of those ways we'll get back to you. But on that moment, say thanks very much, Isabel, and we're going to pass over to Paul van der Balk, who's going to do an update on some of the projects that under his stewardship. Hello, Paul.
Hi, David. Thank you. That was an interesting discussion.
Yeah, I thought it was. Thank you.
Quite a difficult topic. So, hi everyone. I'm Paul van der Balk, project manager for GCP. Given kind of the topic that we wanted to cover in detail this evening, being that previous topic, we've prepared just a very short update on Histon Road, Milton Road, and Waterbeach to Cambridge public transport and active travel route. And I've got a couple of slides from the Greenways manager, so project managers, that I'm going to quickly run through. So, and then we'll leave plenty of time for questions and discussion at the end.
Great. Are you going to share your screen now?
I'll share the screen. Is that okay, David?
Yep, I can see a Histon Road slide, so you're good to go.
Yeah, so with regard to Histon Road, just one slide on Histon Road, given that we've finally got to the end, almost. So in terms of construction, we've reached practical completion point. There's just a couple of tiny little snags to tidy up with the contractor. And we are kind of finalising all of the contractual issues to get to a final point before the year end, if we can. We've still got to do the road safety audit, the post-construction road safety audit. So we are scheduling that in as soon as we've got all of the as-built surveys completed and packaged up. And I envisage that will take a couple of months to undertake, because it's quite a long section of road, and the safety audit team are also under quite a bit of pressure at the moment and a little bit under-resourced. So in terms of the scheme, I hope most people have been able to see kind of the new road now. Just a few statistics here. So in terms of what was built, 6,400 metres squared of new footpaths, 8,000 square metres of new cycle lanes, 540 metres of bus lane, a new junction at Gilbert Road, a new junction design that's kind of a fairly innovative design in terms of the fact that it's kind of one of, I think, 2 such designs in the country at the moment, where there may be a few more coming in Manchester. A few floating bus stops and some landscaping, particularly around Aikman Street, where we put a couple of rain gardens in and enhanced that area. So in terms of the overall aims of the scheme, we look to obviously put enhanced infrastructure in that would help encourage more people to walk and cycle. I think in terms of cycling, we've had a lot of feedback from people saying that they feel a lot more comfortable riding on the road. In terms of drivers, the feedback has been a bit mixed. some people liking the fact that they can actually get past the cyclists now. Some people raising questions on things such as the wands that we've put up at the A14. But overall, I think the feedback that we've received so far has been fairly positive. Just a couple of small issues that we're dealing with. So I anticipate receiving a couple of questions. So the junction of Roseford Road, a few people have commented that it's difficult to see when you're pulling out. So we're aware of that, and we've had a look, and I've asked the designers to kind of take some measurements and see if there's any mitigation that we can put in place for that one. So that's Histon Road. Moving on to Milton Road. So for Milton Road, the key aims are to enhance the public transport journeys, and we are looking at retaining and slightly remodelling the current bus lanes on Milton Road. We want to provide better cycling and walking links, and to do this we are ensuring that we have cycleways, off-road cycleways, both directions for the whole length of Milton Road, between the busway and Mitcham's Corner. We're looking at enhancements to the streetscape, so we're putting in more trees than currently exist. So we obviously have to take the trees that are currently there down to make the improvements, but we are looking to put more trees back in, and we're also looking at some sustainable drainage, so swales and suds which take the water from the carriageway and help with the drainage. And obviously, as part of the overall plan, the whole thing looks at reducing air pollution, improving public health through the modal shift, and looking at trying to reduce cars coming into the city. So in terms of where we are, so the final designs have been completed, and the work package has been given to the contractors who are currently developing the construction plan and looking at costs. We are looking at presenting the final design and the construction plan at a local liaison forum stroke stakeholder event in probably late January, early February next year, before we take the plans and the final business case to the Joint Assembly and the Executive Board. And then we aim to begin construction subject to approval from the board. We aim to begin construction as soon as we can after that board meeting, which will probably look to be in the end of April, early May. So that's Milton Road. I'm happy to take some questions on that. In terms of Waterbeach to Cambridge, in terms of where we are here, so we're looking at linking the new town at Waterbeach to the current guided busway, and we went through the strategic outline business case process in the last year, and the executive board approved the case to go forward to the next stage, which we're currently in, to assess two routes that we took forward, which I've got on the following slide. In terms of where we are, we're progressing the technical work. We've done quite a lot of engagement with key stakeholders, which includes Urban and Civic, who are obviously developing the first part of the new town at Waterbeach. We've had extensive talks also with the County Council's bus team. We're looking at talking with Stagecoach. We've talked to the Science Park and all of the parish councils as well in the area. In terms of what we are looking at producing, we're looking at creating a segregated high quality public transport route, as I said, between Waterbeach and Cambridge. We're also looking at the active travel requirements alongside that route, and there's a number of options around that, given that the developers are already developers of Waterbeach already putting in an active travel route between Waterbeach via the Mere Way link to kind of which comes in near Cambridge Regional College. And obviously we're also the GCP are also delivering a Greenway between Waterbeach and kind of the east side of North Cambridge. So we're taking all that into account, and we'll come up with proposals for kind of what the requirements are for active travel adjacent to our public transport route. We're also looking at park and ride in the corridor. So there's a number of options that we have for kind of the park and ride. We obviously have a current park and ride at Milton. We're looking at options to potentially retain that, or retain part of that space at Milton, and potentially add further park and ride / travel hub facilities near Waterbeach. And there's various options in terms of how we do that, and obviously options in terms of kind of the size of both of those park and rides. Do we kind of put a larger park and ride up at Waterbeach, a smaller one at Milton, potentially remove the one at Milton, or retain the one at Milton, and perhaps we don't need one at Waterbeach? They're kind of all the options that we're looking at. Obviously, we're also looking at how we integrate with the proposed new station at Waterbeach, Newtown, or the relocated station, I should say. In terms of our programme, we're kind of undertaking all of the technical work and the engagement at this stage now, and over the next few months of the new year. And the consultants are pulling all this together, and we look to consult on a preferred route option in October of 2022, alongside our proposed options for park and ride. So just in terms of the routes that we're taking forward, we have, as you can see, both routes link with the proposed Waterbeach relocated station across the town in a westerly direction. Towards the west, we need to cross the A10. So part of the work we're doing is looking at how we cross the A10, what type of junction, whether it's at grade or perhaps a bridge, we're not quite sure. We have a western option which passes to the west of Landbeach and runs somewhere within that green strip before linking with the guided busway just to the north of the point where the busway goes under the A14. Then we have a revised central route which passes through Landbeach. So Landbeach is kind of divided by some fields in that location. So that route passes through those fields and then skirts close to Milton, potentially links with the existing Milton Park and Ride, before most likely heading west along the Butt Lane corridor, whether it's on Butt Lane or we need to provide additional space. And then like the western option, it then links with the guided busway in the same location, making use of that existing infrastructure. So I think that's Waterbeach covered. And in terms of the greenways, so these slides have been provided to me, so I'm not currently managing the greenways projects, but unfortunately the project manager couldn't come to the meeting tonight. So in terms of where we are, we're looking at 12 greenways that will provide active travel routes for cyclists, walkers and equestrians in and around Cambridge. And the diagram to the right shows kind of the rough position of those 12 greenways and all the areas that they link. So the final board approval for the project was granted in December 2020. In terms of the northern section, so for Waterbeach and St Ives greenways, we are currently at the stage where we've appointed a project team from Atkins who have started taking forward the more detailed prelim design of these two routes. So So Atkins are working on those two, and I think also another 4 of the greenways. We have Consultants WSP working on the others, and currently the program manager Thomas is kind of managing that whole relationship with the 2 consultants. In terms of the work we're undertaking at the moment, that will include things like environmental assessments, all the landowner referencing, and eventually negotiation. And we're also looking to build the next stage of the business case for the greenways. So the aim is that during 2022, all of that initial design work is completed. And then we will look to have further engagement with stakeholders once that work is done. We're looking at completing the outline business case for all the 12 greenways in 2022. So in order to take that to the executive board, it's kind of in one go. And then obviously we've got down that the GCP executive board will review the progress in mid-2022. And then in terms of when we start work, we're looking at, in some areas we are kind of starting work kind of on certain sections where we have access to land. An example of this is on the Linton Greenway, where some of the links are being delivered by the CSETs team. And my guess is that we'd probably look at a similar approach in some of the other areas, given the fact that acquiring the land can sometimes be the kind of the big hold up on this type of project. In terms of completion, we're looking at completing the program of kind of delivery in 2025 for the greenways.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Paul. So you're happy to take questions now, are you, Paul?
Yep.
Excellent. Do you want to stop sharing your screen? And that would be good. So we don't all stare at big questions while we're asking questions. So what I'm proposing to do is to just run through the top by topic, which means I have to scroll through the questions. I don't see anybody with their hand up, so let's look at the chat function. So first of all, on Histon Road, there's a couple of questions on Histon Road to start with. First of all, Paul, about the lights at the junction with Huntingdon Road. There's a comment here from Councillor Payne that they're out of sync, leading to long hold-ups for cars on Huntingdon Road in particular. Is there any way that this could be looked at, please? So the phasing of the lights at the Huntingdon Road junction.
Yes, this has just been brought to our attention. Actually, we've actually investigated that, and we have a damaged sensor loop connection that we need to repair. So I've asked for that to be repaired. We have a slight problem in terms of getting it repaired, in terms of it's quite a busy junction, and we need to obviously organise the traffic management at a suitable time, which in the run up to Christmas is a little bit difficult to organise with the guys who give the road space.
Oh,
as soon as possible, we'll have that repaired.
Okay, and when you mean the traffic loops, that's the bit that's embedded in the tarmac that picks up the sensors on the car, the traffic to help the lights move around their faces. Yeah, that's fine. So the second question here is that the railing at the entrance to Histon Road wreck has been removed. Is that going to be replaced or put back in? So I think when you come out of the wreck just by the Domino's Pizza, there was a railing there.
So there weren't any proposals to replace that. I have followed that question has been Councillor Payne asked me this question some time ago, and I've been following up with the designers.
Yeah.
So I haven't got a concrete answer yet, but the designer suggested we wait until the road safety audit is completed, and if they highlight that as an issue, that will give us more reasoning to actually address it. But one option could be that rather than a railing, because the railing takes up some space, is that we potentially could use a bollard there instead of railing.
Okay.
Just to discourage anyone from mounting the pavement, because I think that was one such event that was witnessed. A lorry mounted the pavement in that location, where potentially people or children are coming out of the park entrance.
So just a couple of questions now about just in terms of sort of monitoring. Are we going to be monitoring the Victoria Road, Gilbert Road junction now once it's operational?
So we have been monitoring it, and we've had the team who are commissioned through the County Council Signals team have been out there monitoring an adjustment over a period of, well, not every day, you know, over the last few weeks. But we will continue to monitor how that goes. And I mean, if there are issues with the junction, it's quite a complex junction. If people email us those issues in, we are picking up and acting on them and forwarding them to the team that are kind of will take the signals on in the future, but also are currently kind of trying to optimize that junction.
Thanks, Paul. In your question, you just set out the sort of managing the end of the process. And just a couple of questions is what's the timescale in terms of finishing the bits that are off? And a question here from Lillian, is the budget to do any changes that are needed as part of the final bits of work?
So in terms of the bits that are finishing off, most of them are kind of snags that we've identified as, or that Milestone, the contractor, have identified with their subcontractors as things that need fixing under the existing contract. There's a couple of issues of quality where the subcontractor needs to come back and just do something again. And there's been a couple of other small issues, but most of them are minor. And yeah, there should be budget to undertake those minor things.
Thanks very much, Paul. I don't see any more questions about Histon Road in the chat. I'm just looking at the latest comment. I'm going to move on to Milton Road. So I've got a couple of questions here about Milton Road. So first of all, a question here about the cycleways. Are the cycleways going to be LTM 120 compliant? Are the final plans, are you going to provide LTM 120 compliant junctions for cyclists and pedestrian, and also ensure cyclists meet these guidelines too? There's some concern from the person writing that the latest published plans do not meet those guidelines. So that's a question about the LTM 120 compliance of the cycleways, Paul.
So as the questioner probably knows, LTN 120 guidance was published after we had done substantial part of the design work on Milton Road. However, saying that, I mean, it's a good guidance document. And in fact, for most of the Milton Road design, we've had strong input from the various stakeholders, including CamCycle. So we would have looked to achieve what a lot of the guidance in LTN 120 is stating. Obviously, we had to make you know, a couple of compromises here or there, but in terms of what the LTN 120 is a guidance document, it's not mandatory that you follow the guidance in every single scenario. And when you're retrofitting infrastructure into a limited space, sometimes you have to make, you know, compromises here and there. So that's the kind of approach we've taken. I think in terms of where we've ended up, in terms of where I've ended up, I think I've put significant importance on getting that inbound and outbound cycle route as good as we can. Okay, thanks. I see two people have got their hand up.
So Lillian, you've got your hand up, I can see that. I'm going to allow you to talk now. Is this about Milton Road or was it a Histon Road question?
This is about Histon Road, actually. It was part of what I said. I also had some good comments. I said that there were some good points between except the Ackerman Street and the Carisbrook Road, and that we are very pleased with the trees being there, that we have bridges and we have space enough for cycle lanes and we have space for pavements. But that is the only part. The rest is actually minor changes to the width of the pavements or the width of the cycle lanes. And we also have some problems at the junction with, it used to be called Squash Court Road. It is now Turville Close, which isn't really finished yet. And is that done in cooperation with GCP?
Thanks, Lillian. So, Paul, question about the old squash court entry. I think that's their works, not ours, but I don't know.
So in terms of that, the old squash court entry, I don't, what did you say it was called? Turing Close. We worked with the developer and they commissioned us to build the junction, so their Belmouth Junction onto Histon Road, given that we were undertaking the works along there. And we felt that putting in that ramp before they'd fully completed their development would just kind of, you know, ensure that link was there from the start. But no, they are an independent developer, so any of the work that they're doing further on down that track is not linked in any way to kind of the GCP project.
Okay.
And they would have to go through planning. So all of what they're doing will be kind of, should be within their full planning permission or reserve matters, whatever they have.
Okay. Thanks, Paul. Thanks, Lillian.
Okay. Some good news.
Excellent. Paul Bear Park, I think you've got your hand up, so we'll allow you to unmute you. So, Paul,
hello, Paul. I have a question about the Waterbeach Greenway. So that was split into two, phase 1 and phase 2. Phase 1 has been approved. Phase 2 was the northern section and the southern section. Now the issue with the northern end of phase 1 is it ends at Cardyke Road. So anyone going to the new town has to cycle through the village, which is quite congested. Phase 2 was a segregated route. I suppose my question is, how do we get the phase 2 back on the agenda for discussion at the GCP and then hopefully decision?
Okay, as Paul indicated, the project manager, that's quite a detailed question. I don't think either Paul or I have the knowledge on that topic, unless you're incorrect, unless you're going to prove.
No, I don't know the timings.
No. Paul, what I'll do is I'll take away your question and put it to the project manager and we'll get an answer to you, rather than cobble together something on a project that we're neither the project manager on. Apologies, the project manager couldn't make it to tonight's meeting, so I'm happy to take away that question though.
Okay, thank you, David. Thanks.
Well, just for reference, is the phase 2 kind of the route that passes up through the allotments? Past the allotments?
It is, yeah.
Yeah, so I did meet with the project team. So as part of the Waterbeach to Cambridge project, we're looking at obviously working a little bit more closely with the team who are developing the Greenway. And one positive note is that Atkins are obviously delivering both projects, so you know, the project management teams can work quite closely together. In terms of what they presented to me, they're obviously looking at that phase 2 link at the moment, and as far as I was concerned, that is part of their kind of their design process includes that link at the moment. So I think it'd be worthwhile. I mean, obviously we'll follow up with the team in terms of timings, but it's probably worthwhile that at least at the next one of these forums, we have someone who has a good understanding of kind of that project, better understanding than I have, sorry. And we'll get them to present on exactly what is happening and you know what the aim is. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Paul. Yeah, Linda, I see your request to be copied in on a response. Linda, also, I'll take that away as well. I am trying to manage this, and we in terms of talking about topics, we seem to have slipped back a bit. Paul, there was just a question about people parking on Histon Road in the cycle lanes. Just how's that being managed going forward? And then when we go back to Milton Road.
So the concept on Histon Road was that we obviously removed a significant amount of parking for people. We always said that while we were removing parking on Histon Road, the double yellow lines would allow a slightly compromised situation where people can load and unload, which is the way that the restrictions work. So you would anticipate that, you know, sometimes you may come across a car that is loading or unloading. I think that was a fair compromise to make. In terms of parking, so that's a slightly different problem when you have people parking for longer periods of time. And what I've done is I've asked the enforcement team at the County Council to kind of step up their enforcement on Histon Road since we finished the project. Okay. That's something I continue to do for the next while I'm still involved in the project.
Yeah, and you know, I mean, I think it's always a fair comment is that we can't design out all bad behaviour. There's an expectation that everybody obeys the rules of the road, you know, in any project that we're installing. So yeah, but I think Paul, you've covered it off by saying that you've asked the enforcement to increase their activity on Histon Road. I just want to move on back onto the Milton Road. We've jumped around a bit. I'm hoping everyone's sort of following this. There's a question here from Councillor Scott about the Milton Road LLF. I'm just going to read it out, Paul, which is, we've been assured at a recent council meeting that the Milton Road LLF will be scheduled for a concept design in its final form to be assessed. So essentially, when is the next Milton Road LLF going to be, and what will it be? What topic will it cover, Paul?
So the next Milton Road LLF will be in advance of the Joint Assembly Executive Board cycle, culminating in the Executive Board in March early next year. So we look to hold a local liaison forum either towards the end of January, most likely early February. Whether that's in person or not, I don't know. I prefer it to be in person, to be honest. But given the current situation, we may have to do it online. So in terms of the topics that we'll cover, we'll bring the final detailed design to that local liaison forum and show it. We'll basically have it to show. We'll have it so that we can zoom into certain areas that people are interested in, etc. We will also talk about the construction plan and how we aim to manage the construction. We're currently looking at kind of a three-phased approach whereby we split the road into three work areas where we have contractors working concurrently. And the aim of that is to obviously try to get the construction done as quickly as possible. That's very kind of hot off the press draft kind of information I'm getting from Milestone Infrastructure at the moment as they're currently working up that plan. But kind of we're encouraging them to kind of aim to get the project done as efficiently as possible, obviously, and rather than kind of just work in one place at a time. The good news on Milton Road is that we've pretty much got the width to be able to keep 2-lane running along most of Milton Road while we're constructing it. So we'll only have a couple of pinch points from time to time where we potentially need to put a bit of signalised traffic management up. All other areas, we should be able to do all of our works to one verge, keep the 2-lane running, and at some point in the future switch over and work on the other side.
Okay, thanks, Paul. I can't see any more questions about Milton Road. That's useful information, and as you say, very up to date. Councillor Scott, thanks you for the comments. I'm going to move on to Waterbeach. Now, I can't see very many. There are a number of comments about the relocation of the railway station, which I'm not sure we're best placed to answer. There's a question about, is there network capacity on the railway line, and what the timings are about it. But Paul, it's not our project, and I don't think we have any information in terms of the timings or the scale of parking that will put at the new railway station, or the capacity issues on the railway line. I think they all need to be addressed to Network Rail, really, don't they?
Well, what we can say is that the GCP is currently in discussion with the developer, one of the Waterbeach developers, I think it's RLW, in terms of delivery of the new railway station. But I think the discussions are fairly early, and I'm certainly not aware of any decision that has yet been reached.
Okay. No,
but what I think what the GCP angle is that we're potentially best placed to actually deliver a project if it is to be delivered. And I think that's what the discussions are around. Okay,
that's fine. Thank you. I know we're jumping around a bit, but there's been a follow-up question from Councillor Scott just about Milton Road, which is she was looking for an assurance that Arbury Road, Milton Road Shopping Centre, that they'll be able to keep their trade going over the construction period, and any assurances you can give to the traders that they would be able to keep trading while we're working.
I think, yeah, given the fact we will maintain two-way access along Milton Road, should mitigate the effects of access to their sites, and obviously we will have to retain access into that shopping area throughout the project, and this is one thing that the contractors will need to plan out quite carefully.
Okay, that's fine. I can't see any more questions about Waterbeach, which is where we're on. There are a few slightly random questions. I'll scoop those up at the end, Paul. But there's a couple on the phasing of the greenways. I think we've answered that Paul's presentation. People are asking when the greenways. The plan is to deliver the greenways by 2025. We've appointed consultants. There's a timescale of activity across 2022 in terms of, and I think once this initial work that's been done by the consultants. By Atkins and Duff's WP, and the board has got another view of it, we'll have a clear understanding of the phasing of the works in terms of delivery of the greenways. I think that covers off the questions around that. There's a couple of questions about things I think are outside the scope of the works of our projects. So someone's asking, when will cycleways be between Elizabeth Way South and Milton Road be put in? But I don't think that's not in the scope of any of our works, is it, Paul?
It's not currently in the scope of our works, no.
No. And similarly, if you're cycling from Gilbert Road and Hunting Road to go to Madingley Road, is there a cycle route there? And again, I don't think that's not in the scope of any of our works.
Say that again. Say that one again.
He says cycle route between Gilbert Road and Huntingdon Road for those going to Madingley Road. I don't think there's a scope of works that we have to improve that for cycling at the moment.
Are you talking about through Oxford and Windsor Road?
That's all the gentleman's written.
If he wants to come up and explain that question, I'll be happy to try and answer it. We've got one as well, active travel north of the busway junction on Milton Road.
Yes.
So as part of the Milton Road project, we have got a small add-on project which came out of the County Council cycling team to improve the path on the outbound side of Milton Road between the busway and the Science Park. So we're looking at widening that path there. It wasn't originally part of the Milton Road project. I think instead it's part of a Section 106 agreement with the Science Park, but we will aim to construct that alongside our construction. Okay.
I'm not seeing any more hands up, and I think and just a final comment here, which is the Jane Croston Bridge to Milton Road also needs improvement, but I think that's a statement rather than a question. And just a question again, Paul, another question here about the Greenway delivery. Again, I'll take that back to the, rather than Paul and I cobble together an answer, I'll take that back to the project manager of the Greenways and get an answer back to you, Councillor Bear Park. I think we've covered all the topics that have been raised. I'm not seeing any more hands up. In terms of things like that. I think, again, if anything occurs to you on all these projects, then do drop us an email. We're happy to answer any questions. I think we've set out in terms of, you know, the final bits of work that we're looking to do on Milton Road. Paul set out the sort of timescale of work on Milton Road and when the next LF is. Also summarised where we are with the sort of Milton Waterbeach to Cambridge project, and we've covered off kind of where we are with the sort of the Greenways things. So on that basis, unless anyone has a final question for Paul, either by putting a hand up or typing furiously, I think we will close the meeting at that point. Thank you very much for your time. I hope you found that all very informative. As I say, we will put a recording up on our YouTube channel in the next few days. Thank you very much. And I hope everyone has a good Christmas and a New Year break. Thank you very much. So the meeting is now closed.